And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. Right on the heels, the jury's coming back next week, and we have the Trump trial. Actually, a poll from the McLaughlin Group, a very respected polling agency, is that the majority of Americans, both Democrat and Republicans, um, wanted to stop and believe it is unwarranted. But the real deal, and also in that same poll, it has Biden in a nationally, Biden up, I'm sorry, Trump up 47-43. And given the electoral college, that's really not so good for Uncle Joe. So, your assessment of the trial, how do you think it? What do you think the outcome's going to be, and what do you think the impact is going to be, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin?
Well, the prosecution was devastated by Michael Cohen's testimony. When Cohen,
Electrocuted.
when Cohen admitted that he stole $60,000 from the Trump organization, and it came out that the prosecution knew about this and put him on the stand anyway, it killed their credibility. The defense
Even in New York.
even in New York, the defense further destroyed them with the testimony of Robert Costello, and the judge did himself no favors when he was very blatantly biased against the defense witness. So
Yes, he was.
all of this coming together, people have realized that this has been a sham. And even AOC has stated, oh, yes, this is lawfare. We're trying to take him out. So you've got,
She's a genius.
yeah, you've got the radical left admitting to lawfare. You've got the prosecution completely falling apart because Cohen was not credible at all. And
Zero, yes.
it did not help that election law, which all of this hinges upon, is very complicated. And the judge refused to allow the defense to present an expert witness to explain how the election law works. So it looks.
How is that allowed? I mean, that's like you like friggin' Uganda or something. What the hell is that all about?
Yeah, well,
How can that's not
how I'm actually informed by attorneys that in and itself is not that unique, because judges tend to feel that it's their job to explain the law, not that of an expert witness. So
I will give you that one. Yeah,
basically, the judge didn't want anybody stepping on his toes. However, with all of the other reversible errors that this judge has made, it did not look good for him. And we should point out, the jury has not been sequestered through all of this. So even though they weren't in the room when the judge did some of these, they went home and saw it on the news. They saw MSNBC and CNN going, oh my God, this is a catastrophe. The prosecution has no credibility. And when it was coming from the left-leaning media, even the most diehard Democrats have to go, yeah, this was bad. So it would
okay,
not.
what effect? That's the key.
It would not surprise
first of all, what do
me
you think? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to get off or hung jury? What do you think?
It would not surprise me for the jury to either acquit or have a hung jury. Remember, for a hung jury, you only need one, and it's likely that they made that. There's also the possibility. There's also the possibility the judge has said he's actually considering the defense's motion to dismiss. Prior to this, he hasn't even considered it. So the fact that he's actually considering it means he knows if this comes back with a guilty verdict, it's going to be overturned on appeal.
Okay, but it will have the, let's see, visuals of Trump being a convicted felon.
And that's what the Democrats are counting
Of
on,
course.
because that way, no matter what else happens, even if it's overturned, the left wing media will now and forever refer to Donald Trump as convicted felon Donald Trump. They will
What
hammer.
impact does it have?
Honestly, I think it's going to have a lot less of an impact than people thought going into this. The prosecution did such a bad job and impaled themselves so effectively that most people who were on the fence about Trump v. Biden, they're looking at this going, yeah, no, this was a setup. There was no case there, and they're
Okay,
tired
but do
of
you
it.
think it'll in negative? Do you think it will negatively impact Trump's chances?
I actually don't, because while more centrist Democrats may start wavering and go, well, we have to keep him out of office. He's convicted. I can't go with him. I think you're going to see the actual effect tomorrow when Donald Trump has his rally in the South Bronx.
That's friggin' awesome.
I think if that rally is successful, it's going to tell you all you need to know. The African American community is coming out in droves for Trump. And let me be clear about that. I don't think Trump is going to win the African American vote, but he doesn't have to. If he gets 20% of the African American vote, he's in. And at this point, it looks plausible that he might get as high as 30% of the vote.
There is no question about that. I think it's a real issue. I think the only reason we talked about this last week that Biden agreed to the debates because he knows, or at least his advisors know that he's in big trouble. Look at even that McLaughlin poll, Trump up 47-43. Trump could be behind two in a general poll, but with the electoral college, he could still win. So that is really, really an
and
ominous
and
sign
and
for the Democratic.
the timing of that debate also becomes very interesting, because if Trump does succeed in getting an acquittal or a dismissal, either way, that debate suddenly becomes about Joe Biden, because just prior to that debate is going to be the Hunter Biden trial.
Oh yeah, great point. Yes, and also with Congress looking at, I think it's perjury or contempt of Congress because he basically lied on several occasions. Very good. So you think I actually think, let's be honest, he may not get an acquittal, but a hung jury. I don't understand how he can't get that, and that's almost as good of a win.
Yeah, in this case, a hung jury is as good as a win, especially given New York juries. The fact that all of the cards were stacked against him for this. If he can come up with a hung jury, that's a victory. Because
does it have any
the
does it have any implications? Does it have any implications for the other trials?
Well, at this point, it looks like the other trials are all going to be postponed until after the election. I think that has more of an effect than anything else. I think, with the possible exception of Fannie Willis, most of those are going to start falling by the wayside. I think she's psychotic enough that she wants to push through and she wants to be the one to bag the white whale.
Ain't gonna happen. I doubt it very much.
No, she has no credibility left.
Zero.
Even though she did walk away with the primary yesterday.
Well, the Democratic primary. Hello.
Yes.
Very interesting. And also on the legal note, we're obviously not talking about Trump, but we have the Diddy tapes. Your reflection on that, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah,
He's pretty much finished.
I think he's done. more and more people are coming out saying, yes, we were aware he was doing these things. I think his career is over. I think there's probably enough at this point that he can be convicted.
Agreed. Again, I'm sorry, flip flopping a little bit on the African American issue. Biden gave a commencement at Morehouse College. Um, just absolutely pandering, despicable. Something, a speech that you might have given in 1960, but it just very reflective and being increasingly desperate with the African American community. Plus, not only did he patronize and was pandering to the audience, but he was also lost again on stage. I believe that is a huge problem for his campaign. He literally can't be let out of the house. Your thoughts
Yeah,
on first the speech and then him shaking hands with the janitor. I couldn't even tell you who that guy was. Go ahead.
yeah, over the past several days, Biden has made a couple of speeches geared to shore up the African American vote, and both of them really shot
Bombs.
himself in the foot. The first was the commencement at Morehouse College, where he was talking about how he got into politics to fight for civil rights. A quick Google search of Biden's record shows he voted against civil rights laws. He was never for civil rights.
Who's
Uh,
writing his speeches? We
yeah,
got the Biden is crazy, but how is this getting to the teleprompter is very interesting. He's not ad
well,
libbing.
at
I
the
don't understand that.
he might be in some cases, and as we saw in his speech to the NAACP, just because the speech is on the teleprompter doesn't mean Biden can deliver it. The White House had to release a transcript of the NAACP speech with 9 separate errors that Biden made illustrated on the transcript, some of which were slips of the tongue. Things like referring to the people on January 6th as erectionists instead of insurrectionists. Some were just factually incorrect. He claimed his administration saved families $800,000 a year in healthcare costs. The actual figure
Wow.
was, yeah, the actual figure was $800 a year. But
Yes. Did
he
he
also
reflect on increasing the deficit by 50 or the national debt by 50%?
he
The
did not
deficit, I should say.
he did not mention that, but he did claim to have been vice president during COVID.
Yeah, I heard that one.
So
So I mean,
yes,
can he really be set free? And then the other thing, the other issue, we talked about this like weeks ago, but if it was anyone else, like Clinton, you name it, okay, a whole list, right? I'm talking Bill Clinton. Having, I don't know, I think having Trump out of action because it's almost like the forbidden fruit when gambling was only allowed in New Jersey and Vegas. It was like the little clips people who like it's got more of an impact and he has less opportunity to say something stupid. I think it actually hurt Biden and helped Trump. Plus, when you have JoJo running loose, it ain't pretty.
no, it isn't. And in fact, several experts have, I don't know if they've told this to Trump directly, but they've certainly been saying it through the media, have said that Trump's debate strategy should be to let Biden talk as much as possible and don't interrupt him, because giving Biden the rope, he will hang himself.
Should have done it last time, but anyway, yes, you are correct. I wonder if that's reflective in that Biden's fundraising in April was way down and Trump's was way up.
Yeah,
And
as
also,
it,
you mentioned a good thing. Do you think there's any opportunity or any situation where I like that he's debating next month, like pretty much a month from now? I like your idea or the assertion. I didn't hear it before until you said it, but it would give his handlers time to clean up on aisle 5, but does it also give the Democratic Party time to get other things going if he
That's
really shits on stage,
that's another
literally and figuratively?
yeah, that's another theory I've been hearing, is that the Democratic Party actually likes the idea of having the first debate this early because it will give them time to have a contested convention and take the nomination away from him if he is shown that he cannot handle the debate.
I agree. I think that's going to happen. And do you know another interesting uh, tidbit of information is that you look at older people have a higher rate of voting and turning out than younger people. That's been going on for the dawn of time. But now you have a situation where more and more older people who thought they had retirement in the bag are now saying welcome to Walmart. I can't imagine them voting for Uncle Joe because we said it on this podcast. When your house is on fire, do you really give a shit if the fireman's an asshole? And I think people are really hurting. I mean, I talk about my car buying, potential car buying experience. Did it impact me? No, because my car's perfectly fine. But there's a lot of cars on the lots now. I think people are going into their four. You can't survive on 60 grand a year
No,
under Uncle Joe.
you really can't. And now for seniors, Joe has made it even more difficult because after spending the last 3 years banging the drums on how Republicans want to take away your Medicare benefits, the Biden administration just cut Medicare D benefits. And in fact, it will cost seniors an extra $33 a month just to have their Medicare benefits. And of course, he doesn't want seniors to realize this before the election, so he scheduled the cuts to occur starting January 2025.
Okay, why doesn't the RNC? Why didn't I know about this until our prep? That needs to be blown up on every airway on the swing states. Go ahead. What the hell are they doing?
Yeah, this is something that everybody needs to know. There are certain factors that have been ridiculously quiet. And this is one of them, cutting Medicare benefits to our seniors. And, when Republicans talk about having to make changes to Social Security, to Medicare, every proposal, and this is going back 40 years, has been about people who are first entering Medicare and Social Security, or who will enter Social Security and Medicare in the upcoming 5 years or so. This is the first time that Medicare has been cut for people that already have it. That needs to get out. It also needs to get out, you alluded to this before, the national debt is up 50% from when Joe Biden took office. He talks about cutting the deficit. And let me be very clear about this, because I've met a lot of people that actually do not know the difference between the debt and the deficit. The deficit is how much the country spends above and beyond what the country brings in. So if you're making $60,000 a year and you're spending $75,000, your deficit is $15,000 a year. The debt is the total amount owed. So for you, it's not just that $15,000, it's your mortgage, your car payments, your accumulated debt, everything you owe, credit cards, etc. Well, now Wall Street is starting to get worried because the debt has risen so far, so fast, that the costs associated with managing the debt, the interest rates, all of this, and Interest rates have gone up, of course, during the Biden administration. All of this is now becoming a threat to the U.S. economic health.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually disagree on one thing. I don't think it's really the debt. I think it's Joe Biden who's a threat to this country's health in many ways. Just kidding. Yes, so we look at that. Okay, we also can look at there's a growing talk of widespread labor strikes over this summer that could disrupt travel. I don't think people. I think people might blame Uncle Joe for that too because it's happening under his watch. What do you think? Just
Well,
another reason not to vote for the moron.
it's happening under his watch, and Joe Biden has been touting himself as the most pro-union president. This is him saying this, not anybody else. If he can't get the unions to come to the bargaining table and help them get an agreement, how is he pro-union? This could cost him union votes. And it's certainly going to aggravate the general public who, after hearing Biden tout the unions for years, going, well, now, when we're struggling to make ends meet, they want even more money that's going to make costs go up even higher. It's not going to go well for Biden.
No, it's not.
And in
And
fact,
that's possible.
historically, strikes never go well for the incumbent, especially when they're in an election year.
No, 100%. Could that be why throughout the swing state Democrats are distancing themselves from Uncle Joe? That's really should come as no surprise, correct? You would not. Would you ever want Uncle Joe on the podium with you? That would be, I'd rather have the COVID virus next to me. I
No,
mean, my God.
swing state Democrats are backing away from Biden in droves. They don't want him coming to their elect campaign events. They're backing away from him on border security issues. They're backing away from him on economic issues. They do not want to be tarred with the same brush that's tarring Biden.
And that's really interesting when you're talking. I'm thinking anywhere, any president, because it's something you kind of miss things, right? Any president, I don't care, since I've been born, is coming to Iowa, coming to Michigan, always has the under ticket with him or her, not with Uncle Joe. That's that's really, think about it. I've never seen anyone. I mean, I've seen, maybe, a hospital team next to him, but I've never seen any, congressperson, senatorial candidate, or gubernatorial candidate next to Uncle Joe. Have you?
Well, no, and it's not just the under tickets that this is affecting. Generally, when the president comes to town, unless you're in New York, LA, Chicago, a big city where most residents of big cities view any president, regardless of party, coming to town as a nuisance because it's a traffic tie-up, it's all of this. But when the president comes to a smaller city, to a town, it's a big deal. People line the route of the motorcade just to catch a glimpse. And when Biden went to Atlanta this weekend to give the speech at Morehouse, he was greeted with a rousing "who cares?" Nobody showed up for him.
He has a charisma of sandpaper, unlike Donald Trump, who's going to conduct a rally tomorrow in Harlem, I believe, or the Bronx at least, correct?
It's in the South Bronx. And it's hysterical because the Democratic congressman from the area, and this is an area that borders AOC's district. She's not the congresswoman from this district, but she's next door. And they're outraged. They're like, our constituents aren't going to fall for this. They're not going to believe him. Well, let's see how many people turn out, because every time Trump has had an event in New York over the last few weeks, The turnout has been huge. Outside of the courtroom, if you watch the media coverage, now the media can't get into the court, so they're all outside the court building. You hear in the background crowds shouting, "We love Trump! We love Trump!" This is New York. This is deep blue New York. New York City voted for Biden by 50 points in 2020.
I believe that rally is going to be okay, they're already shivering. They need as many blankets as it's going to send a shockwave, another shockwave, I should say, through the Biden campaign.
There is
it's going to blow them away.
There is actually speculation that thanks to Trump having to do campaign events in New York around the trial, he may do better than any national Republican has done in New York City since Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was the last national Republican to win New York City.
Now, let's also look at things that'll be coming up this summer. What do you think the situation with Hunter, his situation will play in, first of all, in the debate, when Biden says he had nothing to do with any kind of business dealings in China and others. Laptop was a fake. So what do you think Hunter's trials and tribulations will play in Uncle Joe's?
I think it's going to be a major factor, because Trump is certainly going to try to introduce this. I think if we have real moderators doing this, they will have to ask the question, because that was a big part of the 2020 debate, where Biden claims he won because he was able to say Hunter did nothing wrong. The laptop was a fake. It was Russian disinformation.
He read the letter.
Right. He read the letter, and all of that has fallen apart. And now we have Hunter Biden's testimony in court that said, yes, he did make money off of China, which Joe Biden has continually denied. So it just shows how he has been lying and spinning for the last 4 years over this. It's going to be a big impediment to his credibility.
You mentioned about the moderators being at least quasi-fair. I think, I'm just throwing out there, and I want your input on this, and so do our listeners, I'm sure. CNN is hitting the shitter, the proverbial shitter. In fact, their primetime audience is now something in the area of, let's say, cable access, like Knitting with Aunt Gertrude. They have, in the demographic 25 to 54, which is the demographic that means anything, right? They are now looking at 83,000 viewers, which is less viewers than FXX, the home, what is it called? The HGTV, Bravo, the Food Channel. I think, just not because of ideology, I think for survival, have to play this one relative. They have to come out smelling like a rose, or they're further going down to lose increasing credibility and increasingly go down the shitter. Do you think there's any validity to my assertion?
There is. They have to do an amazing job, especially since 18 to 34-year-olds, for the first time, have turned out of cable altogether. They're getting their information from streaming services. They're watching they've turned off their cable providers altogether, and they're watching through streaming. So the viewing habits of the younger generation are not beneficial, not just to CNN, but to most of the cable companies. So for CNN, they have to do this above board. They've got to do a great job on this, because they literally, for their survival, need to grab older voters.
Yes, and have to reestablish some degree of legitimacy. I think that's 100% correct. And speaking of legitimacy, the Biden administration gave their condolences to the fallen leader of Iran, the president. What the f were they thinking about? Like giving condolences to Hitler? What, are you out of your mind?
Yeah, the butcher of Tehran.
There
This
you
is
go.
this
Yeah.
is somebody who killed Americans, who killed his own citizens, who was the leading sponsor of terrorism around the world. And the Biden administration offered their condolences. I think that says more about where the Biden administration is than anything else. They're so desperate to cozy up to Iran that they don't even care about the Iranian people. They don't care about the American people. This is ridiculous. The only comment the Biden administration should have had was good riddance.
Good riddance. Yeah, there you go. Well, it shows incompetency. Like Jake Sullivan, the Mideast has never been quieter. Taking Vic. The whole thing is a shit show. Let's get right down to it. I can't imagine unless Trump is literally locked in a cage, him losing, and I really believe that. I think it's not. I think what's her name, Laura Ingraham said this, and it's maybe basically a metaphor to what we said about when your house is on fire. You People give a shit about democracy and all this kind of bullshit when things are going great and everyone's rocking and rolling. That is not even in the universe when you're putting groceries on your credit card or you're raiding your 401k. Am I not correct, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin?
You are correct. And I think that was a little overstated on her part. I think people do still care about democracy even when they're struggling, but they're starting to see that the Democrats are the one throwing all this lawfare at him. They're the ones that are trying to pull all these dirty tricks in order to keep him off the ballot, keep him off the campaign trail. So people who are so concerned about democracy, they're not convinced that Biden is the great protector.
Well, speaking of what was once the great protector, the International Criminal Court now has a warrant out for, yes, some Hamas people, but yet Netanyahu and some other Israeli leaders. And George Clooney, the boy genius, his wife, is a big proponent of that. And guess what? They'll be at a rally in LA for Uncle Joe. Also, showing the widespread anti-Semitism around the world. France, the real backbone of integrity, a la World War II. They never worked harder, and when they were under the influence of the Germans, but they throw their support for this warrant as well. And Ireland, Norway, and Spain have moved to recognize Palestine. Let's go and reward terrorism. Excellent.
Yeah, we do need to clarify a little bit. The ICC has not issued the warrants. The prosecutor at the ICC has applied for the warrants. We will see over the next 2 weeks if the ICC actually issues them. But the ICC is essentially a toothless organization. They've had for months warrants issued for Vladimir Putin. And of course, they haven't been able to do anything about it. Now, the Republicans have not been a fan of the ICC going back probably about 20 years or so. The Democrats have been very skeptical about the ICC for about 8 to 10 years. So, and the US did issue a protest about these warrants. So if the ICC actually does go forward with this, they are going to lose the United States support. And remember that under the Trump administration, the US actually pulled out of the ICC. Biden was the one that brought us back. So
of course he did.
Surprise,
right, surprise.
Without the US support, The ICC cannot do anything. They need
Anything.
they need a superpower backing them. And Russia and China won't back them because they're the ones committing the human rights violations. We should also point out that the ICC has completely ignored human rights violations by Syria and Iran. So the fact that they would go after Israel and leave these other countries, oh, it's okay for them to do it, just highlights the anti Semitism involved in this.
It also highlights they're a globalist, elitist organization, sipping Chardonnay and having a steak tartare. Okay, it's a bullshit, like you said, toothless organization, and obviously riddled because the new left is the new anti-Semites, riddled with anti-Semitism. Now, on a much lighter note, I would have to say, we have that. We have that five college recruitment, and especially the Ivy League for major corporations, is 5% down. And we have, woke and go broke. Pride Month, surprise, surprise. Target was a big proponent of that and lost a shitload of equity. Has been scaled back tremendously. Dr. Lopkin, does those two little factoids surprise you?
They don't really surprise me. I don't know that I would call it a lighter note because, especially if you're in the job market and you're a college graduate, finding out that the companies are going to be hiring 5% fewer grads is not, a light matter.
I'm sorry, I do think it's a humorous note. Not
It's,
if you're a regular blue collar college
yeah,
graduate. Yes, that's very difficult, and I take that back. But if you graduated the Ivy League and you were in a Hamas demonstration, I couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of morons.
but, yeah, I think I have to wonder how much of that 5% is going to be aimed at the people who were protesting, hopefully, most of it. But in terms of what you were saying about Pride Month, this is not surprising at all because these companies have to answer to their customers and their shareholders. And in a recent survey of 18 to 34-year-old consumers, 58% said they don't care if a company supports LGBTQ plus. 42% said yes, it's a bonus. But when 58% of your market is saying, no, you know what? Just focus on serving the customer. We don't care about your politics. That is where you have to pay attention.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, it is. It is actually quite interesting. And speaking of interesting, you talk about woke CEOs. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was like hallucinating. So they're going to have Gail King on as one of the swimsuit models. Yikes. The Sports Illustrated. So they had the woke CEO. This woman says literally in Sports Illustrated, which I used to get when I was a kid, not only for the swimsuits, but it used to be a really good sports magazine. Literally said, and she should be fired immediately for this. Says, we don't care. The people that follow us, follow us in this transition, no pun intended, are the people we want, and the people that don't, we don't want them. Really?
Okay,
You're in bankrupt, you moron.
yeah, Sports Illustrated, I don't know if they've officially declared bankruptcy or if they're just on the verge, but I mean, they're a dying brand. So the
Goodbye,
idea,
yes.
yeah, the idea that anything they do has any relevance is out the window. As for Gail King, let's not forget that Gail King just had and lost a program on CNN. I believe it lasted 3 weeks and they canceled her because even CNN couldn't stomach the low ratings she was getting. So why would you bring her in? She does not bring anything to the table.
100%, Dr. Locke. I didn't even think of it that way. If you had, let's say, so like Martha Stewart. Yeah, she's 80, but hey, she had, that was kind of cool because she's a real celebrity. Gail King, the only reason, okay, her real talent level is where she used to be.
Her,
Channel 3, Hartford, Connecticut, doing the 6 o'clock news.
well, no,
That is maxed out.
even that was above. She was punching above her
I'm being
grade at
very
that
nice.
point.
It's,
Her
the
talent.
weather's nice.
Yeah, her talent is one thing and one thing only. She's Oprah's best friend. That's it.
There you go.
Without that,
Friends in high places.
yes, she would not have a career.
She might have a career on cable access, actually, because you were right. I was just being very nice, Dr. Lapin. Her real talent would be gardening with Gail.
There you go. Yes.
795 in Cincinnati. Well, Dr. Lapkin, another Carnivore Bite has concluded. A great show. I really enjoyed it, as always. We have the trial, the results next week. Hopefully, it'll fit into our broadcast. But
we
our
hope.
listeners can certainly.
I don't know if it will, because the jury isn't scheduled to start deliberating until Tuesday. So there's a good chance we won't be able to talk about the results of the trial until the following week.
Okay, well, we'll be ready if yes or no, if the verdict does come out or does not. But our listeners can always give their input, can't they?
Yes, they can. You can go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, messages there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what matters to you. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lapkin. We'll be back next week.
We'll see you then.